Hello and welcome. I am so glad you've joined me tonight. Tonight, we are going to embark on a quiet, slow exploration of a place known for its strength and its stillness, New Hampshire. It is a land of granite and mystery, a place where the mountains whisper old stories and the forests hold a deep emerald silence. Before we begin our journey through the winding roads and the ancient peaks, I'd like to invite you to gently subscribe. And like this video, if you find this quiet atmosphere comforting, it is a soft way to help this channel grow, and it allows us to continue creating these peaceful spaces for you to rest. Your presence here is valued, and I hope these words help you find the tranquility you're looking for. Now, as we prepare to drift away into the history and the science of the North Country, I want you to focus on your surroundings. Make sure you're tucked in exactly as you like. Feel the coolness of the sheets and the comforting weight of your blanket. Let your eyes close, or simply let them rest on the soft glow of the screen. Together, let's take a very slow, deep breath in, filling your chest with calm, and then exhale, letting the air carry away any lingering thoughts of the day. Just breathe, there is no rush. In the silence that follows, imagine the landscape of New Hampshire unfolding before you. It is a state defined by its texture, the rough grain of gray granite, the soft needle carpet of the pine forest, and the cold, clear clarity of its glacial lakes. It is a place that feels sturdy, a place that has been shaped by immense forces over millions of years, from the grinding weight of mile-thick ice to the patient erosion of the rain. As we move through the night, we will discover how the earth was carved by ice, how the wind howls over the highest peaks, and how the stars look when there is no city light to dim their sparkle. It is a landscape of rugged beauty, but it is also a landscape of the mind. To truly understand the character of this land, we must first look at the words that define it. New Hampshire is a place of fierce independence, a state with a motto that resonates across the entire country. Yet, that famous sentiment wasn't born from a loud proclamation or a public speech. It began with a quiet letter written by a man who simply wanted to remember his friends, even as his own strength was fading. Live, free, or die. These 4 words are synonymous with New Hampshire. You see them today on every green and white license plate, a bold, unyielding declaration of independence that greets every traveler who crosses the state line. But the story of how these words became the state's heartbeat is surprisingly intimate, and perhaps a bit softer than the phrase suggests. It wasn't shouted from a podium during a heated political rally, nor was it written into a constitution during the height of a revolution. Instead, it was penned in the quiet of a private room, late in the life of a man who had seen enough of the world to know what truly mattered. In 1809, the veterans of the Battle of Bennington were gathering for a reunion to celebrate their victory and remember those they had lost. They sent an invitation to their old commander, General John Stark, the legendary Revolutionary War hero. But by then, Stark was 81 years old. His body was tired, and he was too ill to make the journey to meet his old friends. Instead of his presence, he sent a letter, a simple, handwritten message to be read aloud at the gathering. Imagine him there, perhaps sitting in a high-backed wooden chair by a window overlooking the Merrimack River, his hand moving slowly as he dipped a quill into an inkwell. He wasn't writing for history. He was writing for his comrades. At the end of his letter, he offered a toast for them to drink in his absence. He wrote, "Live, free, or die. Death is not the worst of evils." There is a gentle irony in those words, such a powerful, ringing sentiment, one that would eventually be stamped onto millions of metal plates and echoed by generations. Began as a quiet message from an old soldier who was too weak to leave his home. It was a private reflection on the value of a life well lived, a sentiment shared between friends who understood the weight of sacrifice. When we hear it today, it sounds like a roar, but when it was first written, it was likely nothing more than the scratch of a pen on parchment in a silent house. You might wonder why such a small state, known for its peaceful villages and rolling hills, would hold on to such a fierce sentiment for over 2 centuries. Perhaps it is because the people of New Hampshire have always seen their own character reflected in the very ground they walk upon. There is a certain stubbornness here, a refusal to be moved or broken by the elements or the passage of time. The sentiment of the people and the substance of the earth are one and the same. As we think of General Stark's unyielding spirit, we can begin to look deeper beneath the soft moss and the fallen leaves of the forest floor. The true strength of the state isn't just found in its history or its words. It is written in the very bones of the land. To understand why this place feels so steady and so permanent, we must look at what lies beneath the surface, at the ancient, cooling heart of the world that gave New Hampshire its most famous nickname. Almost everywhere you go in New Hampshire, you are walking upon a foundation forged in the deep, silent heat of the earth's interior. While the state has proudly carried the nickname the Granite State for generations, the stone beneath its soil is far more than just a common mineral. It is some of the oldest and hardest granite in the world, a substance so dense and unyielding that it has shaped the very character of the landscape and the people who live here. To understand this stone, we have to travel back in time, millions of years, to a period when the earth was much more restless than it is today. Imagine, far below the surface, great chambers of molten rock or magma pulsing with heat. This magma did not erupt into the sky as a volcano's might. Instead, it remained trapped deep underground, insulated by the thick layers of the crust above. Because it was so well hidden, it began a process that was incredibly, almost unimaginably, slow. It began to cool. In the world of geology, speed is everything. When lava cools quickly on the surface, it becomes glass or fine-grained stone. But when magma cools slowly over thousands or even millions of years, it has the time to grow. The atoms within the liquid rock begin to find one another, locking together in perfect, repeating patterns. This slow-motion dance creates the large, interlocking crystals of quartz, feldspar, and mica that we recognize as granite. It is this crystalline structure that gives the stone its legendary strength. It is not just a solid mass. It is a complex, woven tapestry of minerals that have been pressed together by the weight of the world itself. As you lie there, perfectly still, try to picture the sheer scale of this formation. New Hampshire sits atop a massive, ancient crystalline structure, a subterranean mountain range that has spent eons being carved by ice and water. The granite is so tough that it resisted the grinding weight of mile-high glaciers during the last ice age, remaining steadfast while softer rocks were swept away. It provides a sense of profound stability, a feeling that the ground beneath is not going anywhere. It is a silent, heavy anchor in a changing world. But this granite does not always stay hidden beneath the pines and the moss. In some places, the earth's crust has shifted and buckled, pushing these ancient stones toward the clouds. The very same rock that forms the deep floor of the state also rises up to form its most majestic heights. If we follow the lines of the granite upward, leaving the quiet valleys behind, we find ourselves climbing toward the sky, toward the jagged peaks of the White Mountains. And at the very top of this world sits a place where the earth meets the atmosphere in a spectacular, if somewhat restless, embrace. We are moving now toward the highest point in the state, a place where the ancient granite faces its greatest challenge from the elements above. As we climb these granite slopes, the air begins to thin and the temperature drops. We are approaching the summit of Mount Washington, the highest peak in the northeastern United States. Standing at 6,288 feet, it might not seem tall compared to the giants of the West, but Mount Washington possesses a character all its own. It is famously home to what many call the world's worst weather. For decades, it held a singular, staggering record, the highest wind speed ever recorded by human instruments on the surface of the earth. On a spring afternoon in 1934, the wind reached a velocity of 231 miles per hour, a force so powerful it would be difficult to even imagine standing against it. To understand why this peak is so restless, we have to look at the map of the sky. Mount Washington sits at a unique atmospheric crossroads where three major storm tracks frequently converge. One path brings moisture and warmth up from the Gulf of Mexico. Another carries weather across the vast plains from the Great Lakes. And a third sweeps up the Atlantic coast, carrying the salt and energy of the sea. When these massive systems meet, they are squeezed through the funnel of the presidential range. This is known as the Venturi effect. Much like water moving through a narrow pipe, the air must speed up to pass through the mountain gaps. It is a place of constant motion, where clouds are born and dissipated in the span of a few heartbeats. Yet, even in its most turbulent moments, there is a strange hypnotic beauty to the mountain's power. From the safety of your room, let the idea of that wind become a tool for your relaxation. Think of it not as a storm, but as a great cleansing breath taken by the planet. The sound of such a wind is not a sharp whistle, but a deep oceanic roar, a low-frequency vibration that echoes through the very granite we spoke of earlier. It is a rhythmic hum, a white noise so vast and all-encompassing that it seems to smooth over the edges of the world. You are here in the stillness while the mountain stands guard, weathering the sky on your behalf. The wind is a distant song, a reminder of the earth's vitality that only makes your current comfort feel more profound. The peak is often shrouded in a thick, milky fog for more than 300 days a year, creating a world of soft edges and hidden mysteries. The rime ice that forms on the observatory buildings grows in delicate, feather-like structures, reaching out into the wind like frozen wings of crystal. It is a landscape of extremes, but it is also a landscape of profound endurance. The mountain does not fight the wind. It simply exists within it, unmoving and serene. As we descend from the wind-swept summit and move back down into the jagged notches of the White Mountains, we find that the elements have not just tested the peaks, they have sculpted them. For thousands of years, the ice and the wind worked together to carve shapes into the stone that seemed almost intentional. One of these shapes became the most beloved symbol in all of New Hampshire, a silent guardian that watched over the mountain passes for millennia. It was a profile of stone, etched by nature itself, that looked out over the valley with a gaze as steady as the granite it was made from. This was a face of stone that the people of the state came to know as a living part of their history. This face, known as the Old Man of the Mountain, rested high upon a cliff on Cannon Mountain, overlooking the mirror-like waters of Profile Lake. It wasn't a single piece of stone, but a series of 5 massive granite ledges that, when viewed from just the right angle, formed the unmistakable profile of a stern yet peaceful man staring out toward the horizon. It was a masterpiece of natural engineering born from the slow, patient work of the earth itself. About 12,000 years ago, the great Laurentide ice sheet, a glacier miles thick, began its long retreat northward. As this massive weight moved, it scraped and plucked at the mountainside, leaving behind fractured rock that gravity eventually settled into that iconic shape. For centuries, the Old Man was a symbol of New Hampshire's rugged character, a face of stone that seemed as though it would endure as long as the mountains themselves. But even the hardest granite is subject to the quiet, persistent forces of nature. Over the millennia, water found its way into the tiny fissures of the rock. In the cold New Hampshire winters, this water would freeze and expand, a process called frost wedging, slowly prying the layers of the face away from the cliff. For decades, humans tried to help the Old Man stay in place. Engineers used heavy steel turnbuckles and waterproof epoxy to stitch the stone together, acting as silent caretakers for a patient that was thousands of years old. There was a deep collective affection for this formation, a feeling that as long as the Old Man was there, the world remained in its proper order. The end came not with a roar, but in the soft, misty silence of a spring night. Between the late hours of May 2nd and the early morning of May 3rd, 2003, the Old Man finally let go. Heavy clouds and rain had moved in, veiling the mountain in gray. When the mist cleared the next morning, the profile was gone. The ledges had collapsed into a heap of rubble at the base of the cliff. There was a profound sense of change in the air, a realization that even the most permanent-seeming things are part of a shifting, living landscape. Yet, in New Hampshire, the Old Man hasn't truly left. He remains a ghost in the geography, his image still appearing on every highway sign, on the back of the state's quarter, and in the hearts of those who remember looking up at the notch. It is a reminder that the essence of a place lives on in our stories, even after the physical form has changed. As we leave the jagged heights and the memories of the stone face behind, the landscape begins to soften. We move away from the high inland peaks, following the natural tilt of the land toward the southeast. The air begins to lose its sharp mountain chill, replaced by a softer, more humid breeze. The dense forests of spruce and fir give way to hardwoods, and soon the very scent of the world changes. The earthy aroma of the woods is joined by a faint, bracing hint of salt. We are approaching the edge of the state, where the granite meets the tide. It is a transition from the ancient, unmoving stone of the mountains to the restless, rhythmic pulse of the Atlantic Ocean. As you follow that scent of salt and damp earth, the landscape opens up, revealing a horizon where the sky and the water become one soft blue-gray blur. It is a surprising transition, for while New Hampshire is defined by its massive, unmoving mountains, it also possesses a gateway to the vastness of the Atlantic Ocean. But this gateway is a modest one. New Hampshire holds a unique distinction among the coastal states of America. It has the shortest ocean coastline of any state that touches the sea. If you were to stand on the sandy beach at the southern border and begin walking north, you would find that the entire Atlantic front of the state spans only about 18 miles. It is a small, precious sliver of land tucked between the much longer coastlines of its neighbors, Massachusetts and Maine. In the time it takes for a gentle rain to pass or for a short mid-afternoon rest, you could drive the entire length of the state's ocean border. It is a journey that takes barely 20 minutes, yet within those 18 miles, the character of the land shifts beautifully. This coastline, though brief, is a masterclass in what geographers call tidewater geography. Unlike the long sandy stretches of the southern states, this coast is rugged and varied. It is a place where the granite bones of the state reach out into the surf, creating small, sheltered coves and rocky outcroppings where the water swirls in quiet eddies. The science of this landscape is defined by the way the land and sea interact. Because the coast is so short, every inch of it is vital. The centerpiece of this maritime world is the Piscataqua River. This is not a slow, meandering river, but a powerful tidal estuary. It is one of the fastest-flowing navigable rivers in the world, where the massive volume of the Atlantic Ocean pushes inland with every rising tide, then pulls back with a silent, irresistible force. This constant movement of water has carved out a deep water harbor at Portsmouth, allowing large ships to glide into the heart of the town, even though the state's actual touch point with the open sea is so narrow. There is something deeply peaceful about the idea of a tidewater region. It is a place of balance, where the fresh water of the inland streams meets the salt of the sea. In these brackish waters, the rhythm of life is dictated entirely by the moon. Twice a day the water rises, flooding the salt marshes and bringing with it the nutrients of the deep ocean. Twice a day it recedes, leaving behind the scent of mud and salt and the quiet calls of shorebirds. As you imagine yourself standing on the shore at Hampton, you can feel the immense scale of the Atlantic stretching out before you, yet you are anchored by the knowledge that the land behind you is solid and familiar. The absurdity of such a tiny coastline, 18 miles of ocean for a state of nearly 10,000 square miles, only makes the area feel more special, like a hidden garden or a private balcony overlooking the world's largest stage. The waves here don't crash with the violence of a storm-tossed cliff. Instead, they lap against the shore with a steady, rhythmic pulse, a natural metronome that helps clear the mind. The air is heavy and cool, carrying the moisture of the spray. From the shore, your gaze naturally wanders away from the mainland, drifting across the undulating blue of the water toward the horizon. And there, just a few miles out, emerging through the soft haze of the sea mist, a small cluster of islands appears, floating like dark jewels on the surface of the Atlantic. These are the outposts of the state, the lonely, beautiful fragments of land that exist where the granite finally yields to the deep. As you look out toward those dark jewels on the horizon, you are seeing the Isles of Shoals, a small, rugged archipelago split between the waters of New Hampshire and Maine. These non-islands may seem lonely today, but history tells us they were once the beating heart of the North Atlantic. Long before the Pilgrims made their famous landing at Plymouth, these rocky outcrops were the fishing capital of the New World. European fishermen would spend their summers here, drawn by the incredible abundance of cod in the cold, deep waters. They lived simply in small stone huts, drying their catch on wooden racks under the sun and the salt air, creating a thriving community on the very edge of the known world. There is a profound sense of peace that settles over these islands now. On Star Island, the largest of the islands within New Hampshire's borders, the modern world feels very far away. There are no paved roads and no frantic pace of life. Instead, there is the quiet, rhythmic beauty of the landscape. Imagine walking along the winding paths of crushed stone, past the weathered Wakat buildings that have stood against the wind for centuries. The air is remarkably clear here, carrying the sharp, clean scent of the ocean and the wild roses that grow in the sheltered hollows of the rocks. High above, the sky is filled with the graceful movement of oceanic birds. The Isles are a sanctuary for gulls, snowy egrets, and the elegant common terns. You can hear their distant echoing calls as they glide on the thermal currents. Their wings white against the deep blue of the sky, they nest among the crevices of the granite, protected by the isolation of the sea. If you listen closely, you can hear the primary music of the Isles, the sound of the Atlantic meeting the ancient stones. It is a slow, heavy sound, the deep sigh of a massive body of water leaning into the earth. The waves do not rush. They roll in with a steady, patient power, washing over the dark, barnacle-crusted rocks. As the water recedes, it creates a gentle, bubbling hiss as it drains through the tide pools, leaving the stones glistening like polished obsidian. This cycle has continued for thousands of years, a constant, soothing pulse that reminds us of the endurance of the natural world. The granite here is some of the most resilient on the planet, standing firm against the relentless push of the tides. It is a landscape of steadfastness, a place where you can feel the weight of time in every smooth pebble and jagged cliff. The rock holds the warmth of the sun long after the light begins to fade, radiating a gentle heat back into the cooling evening air. As the sea mist begins to settle over the islands and the first stars blink into existence above the waves, we begin to move away from the salt spray and the restless tides of the coast. We turn our attention back toward the interior of the state, traveling over the forest and the rolling hills. We are leaving the rhythmic breathing of the ocean behind for a different kind of water, still, deep, and vast. We are heading into the heart of New Hampshire's lake country, where the water is fresh and the silence is of a different quality altogether. We are moving toward a place where the mountains meet the water in a quiet, eternal embrace. As we travel inland, the air changes. The sharp saltiness of the Atlantic fades, replaced by the scent of pine needles and damp earth. We find ourselves standing on the edge of a vast, shimmering expanse, Lake Winnipesaukee. The name itself is a melody, a word that seems to ripple as you say it. In the language of the Abenaki people, it has been translated most famously as the smile of the Great Spirit. When you see the moon reflecting off its surface on a perfectly still night, the light fracturing into 1,000 silver shards, it is easy to understand why that name has endured. Another translation calls it beautiful water in a high place. At over 500 feet above sea level, the lake sits like a sapphire jewel, cradled by the surrounding mountains and hills. The story of this lake began nearly 15,000 years ago, during the end of the last ice age. It wasn't formed by a simple river or a spring, but by the incredible slow-moving weight of the Laurentide ice sheet as this massive glacier, which was over a mile thick in some places, began its retreat northward. It acted like a giant, patient sculptor. It did not just pass over the land. It pressed into it with unimaginable force. The ice plucked at the granite beneath, scooping out a deep, irregular basin. Because the bedrock beneath New Hampshire varies in hardness and composition, the glacier carved more deeply in some areas than others, creating the jagged, complex shoreline we see today, a labyrinth of bays, coves, and hidden inlets that stretch out like the long, elegant fingers of a hand. Because the lake is so large, covering about 71 square miles, it functions almost like a small inland sea. It is so vast that it creates its own local weather patterns, a microclimate that behaves independently of the surrounding forests. In the late summer and early autumn, the deep waters hold onto the warmth of the sun long after the air has begun to turn crisp. When the cool night air rolls down from the peaks of the Ossipee Mountains and touches the surface of the relatively warm water, a magical phenomenon occurs. A thick white fog rises from the surface, swirling in slow, ghostly patterns. This lake smoke can become so dense that it swallows the shoreline entirely, muffling every sound until the only thing left is the gentle, rhythmic lap of water against the stones. It is a world of soft edges and quiet mysteries, where the trees on the far shore disappear into a veil of white, leaving you in a space of perfect, cushioned silence. But the lake is more than just a surface of water and mist. Within its depths and scattered across its wide expanse, there are features that seem almost impossible for a body of fresh water. It is a world filled with hidden corners and unexpected sights, a place where the geography of the land continues right into the heart of the water. As the mist begins to thin, we start to see the dark shapes of land rising out of the blue, each one a tiny world of its own, waiting in the stillness. As the morning mist peels back from the surface of Lake Winnipesaukee, it reveals a scattered archipelago that feels almost like a secret kingdom. There are 258 islands dotted across these waters, ranging from sprawling land masses with dense forests to tiny solitary rocks that barely break the surface. Some of these islands are so small, so perfectly isolated, that they hold only a single weathered pine tree, its roots clinging to the granite as it stands watch over the blue expanse. Imagine a world where your entire universe is just a few square yards of stone and the whispering needles of one ancient tree, surrounded on all sides by the quiet, rhythmic lapping of the lake. It is a place of absolute simplicity, where the passage of time is marked only by the shifting shadows of the branches on the water. In this world of scattered islands, a unique tradition has persisted for over a century, weaving the inhabitants together across the waves. Every summer morning, as the sun begins to burn off the last of the lake smoke, a sturdy vessel called the M.V. Sophie C. departs from the docks in Weirs Beach. This isn't just a ferry or a tour boat, it is one of the few floating post offices in the entire United States, a commissioned branch of the U.S. Postal Service that carries the mail across the water. The Sophie Sea is a vessel of connection, a moving bridge that links the mainland to the quiet, isolated lives of the islanders. Visualize the Sophie Sea gliding through the water, its engine a low, comforting hum that vibrates softly through the hull. It moves with a slow, deliberate purpose, navigating the narrow channels and hidden passages between the islands. On the wooden docks of these remote outposts, residents wait in the cool morning air, watching for the white wake of the boat to appear in the distance. The mail carrier doesn't just deliver letters and packages, they bring a sense of continuity to the lake. There is something deeply peaceful about the sight of a mailbag being handed over from the deck of a boat to a small wooden pier. The sound of the water sloshing rhythmically against the pilings, and the soft exchange of morning greetings before the boat pulls away once more. The boat disappears back into the light haze of the horizon, leaving only a gentle ripple behind. Sometimes the fog is so thick that the pilot must navigate by memory, and the subtle cues of the shoreline, the boat becoming a ghost in the mist. The horn sounds a soft, low note that echoes off the hidden hills, a signal that the world is still there, even when it cannot be seen. To live on one of these islands is to embrace a slower pace of existence, where the arrival of the mailboat is the heartbeat of the day, a gentle reminder of the passage of time in a place that otherwise feels suspended in a quiet, watery dream. As we drift away from the islands and the rhythmic pulse of the lake, let yourself sink a little deeper into the softness of your surroundings. Take a moment to feel the stillness of the air in your room, mirroring the stillness of the water after the boat has passed. Let go of any remaining tension in your shoulders, letting them drop back against the mattress. Feel the weight of your body, supported and safe, as if you too were floating on a calm, dark lake under a vast, protective canopy. We are moving now from the water's edge into the deeper reaches of the New Hampshire story, where the silence of the woods meets the silence of the sky. As you find yourself drifting further into this state of calm, take a gentle moment to check in with your physical self. If your pillow feels a bit too high or too low, adjust it now with a slow, mindful movement. Let your head sink into the center of that softness, feeling the way it cradles the base of your skull. Notice the weight of your limbs, your arms resting loosely by your sides, your legs heavy and still. Imagine that weight as a grounding force, anchoring you safely to your bed while your mind is free to wander through the cool, crisp air of a New Hampshire night. Take one more slow breath in, feeling your chest rise like a gentle tide, and as you exhale, let go of any lingering thoughts from the day, leaving only the quiet pulse of the present moment. The night sky over the Granite State is a masterpiece of stillness. Away from the glowing hum of the coastal cities, up in the high notches of the White Mountains, or the deep reaches of the great North Woods, the darkness is absolute and velvety. It is a true deep indigo that seems to stretch on forever, unmarred by the haze of artificial light. When you look up in this imagined darkness, the stars do not just twinkle. They burn with a steady, ancient light. The Milky Way reveals itself not as a faint smudge, but as a brilliant silver river of dust and suns, arching from one horizon to the other. There is a profound silence in such a view, a reminder of the vastness of the universe and the small, cozy pocket of warmth you occupy within it. The air is cold enough to make the stars seem sharper, like diamonds set against black silk, yet you are tucked away, shielded and warm, watching the slow rotation of the cosmos from a place of perfect security. This sense of clarity, of seeing the world and the heavens with such unobstructed vision, seems to have infused the very character of the people who first settled these rugged hills. There is a directness here, a way of looking at the horizon and deciding upon a path long before others have even woken to the day. The same granite that forms the mountains seems to have lent a certain steadfastness to the local spirit, a quiet, resolute independence that does not wait for permission to act. It is perhaps because of this flinty resolve that this small, mountainous patch of land has so often found itself at the very forefront of history. In the stillness of the New Hampshire night, it is easy to imagine the flickering candlelight in the windows of small colonial homes centuries ago, where minds were already turning toward a new and uncertain future. Long before the rest of the world caught fire with the spirit of change, the people of these woods and valleys were already making their voices heard in the silence. They were a people of firsts, driven by a singular, quiet momentum that would eventually shape the destiny of an entire continent. As we sit with the stars and the shadows of the pines, we begin to see how this landscape of granite and sky cultivated a legacy of being the first to step forward, the first to speak, and the first to claim a new kind of freedom. As you rest, let your mind drift back to the flickering candlelight of a cold January night in 1776. The town of Exeter, nestled near the coast, was draped in the heavy silence of a New England winter. The trees were skeletal against the gray sky, and the only sound was the occasional crack of ice on the river or the crunch of boots on frozen earth. In this quiet, unassuming setting, a group of delegates gathered with a weight on their shoulders that few could truly fathom. They were the members of the 5th Provincial Congress, and they were about to step into the unknown long before the rest of the world was ready to follow. On January 5th, 1776, half a year before the Liberty Bell would ring in Philadelphia and the Great Declaration would be signed, New Hampshire became the very first colony to declare its independence from Great Britain. It was a moment of profound, hushed significance. There were no cameras, no microphones, and no instant dispatches to the world. There was only the scratch of a quill on parchment and the steady, rhythmic breath of men who knew they were committing an act of high treason against the most powerful empire on earth. By adopting their own formal constitution, they weren't just protesting or petitioning for better treatment. They were asserting that they were already a sovereign state, capable of governing themselves by their own laws and their own lights. There is something deeply characteristic of the Granite State in this quiet rebel nature. It wasn't a move made for theater or for the sake of a loud public outcry. It was a practical, resolute decision born from the necessity of the moment and the hardy spirit of the people. The inhabitants of New Hampshire have always possessed a certain flinty independence, a preference for doing what needs to be done without waiting for the rest of the world to catch up. They are a people who value their privacy and their autonomy. Yet they are the first to step onto the ice when a path needs to be cleared. While the larger colonies were still embroiled in heated debates and hesitant negotiations, the people of these northern woods had already looked at the granite of their hills and decided they would stand on their own. In the warmth of your room, you can almost feel the gravity of that small room in Exeter, the smell of wood smoke, the dim orange glow of the hearth, and the profound sense of purpose that filled the air. These were not professional politicians in the modern sense. They were neighbors, merchants, farmers, and craftsmen who had reached a collective realization. Their bravery wasn't loud or boastful. It was the bravery of a stone wall standing firm against the winter wind season after season. They set a precedent, a standard of being the first to speak and the first to act that would echo through the centuries and define the state's role in the American story. This historical inclination to lead the way, to be the initial pulse in a larger heartbeat, eventually found a new expression in the way the state interacts with the rest of the country. The independence that began in that snowy January has evolved into a different kind of first. It shifted from the declaration of a new government to the delicate, vital task of vetting those who wish to lead it. Just as Exeter was the starting point for a nation's freedom, New Hampshire's small towns, winding roads, and quiet diners have become the starting point for the highest office in the land. This transition from revolutionary independence to a modern civic duty happened slowly, like the turning of a tide, but it preserved that same essential quality, the steadfast belief that a small, thoughtful group of citizens should be the very first to weigh in on the future of the nation. This legacy of being the first to act is not merely a historical footnote. It is a living, breathing part of the state's identity, codified in its very laws. There is a specific statute in New Hampshire that requires its presidential primary to be held at least 7 days before any similar event in another state. It is a quiet, steadfast rule that ensures the people of these granite hills remain the first to cast their gaze upon those who wish to lead the nation. This isn't about power in a loud or aggressive sense. It is about a deep-seated belief in the importance of the individual's voice and the value of a small, attentive community. In the world of politics, this has created a phenomenon known as retail politics. Imagine, if you will, the soft amber light of a small-town diner on a cold Tuesday morning. Outside, the snow falls in thick, silent flakes, muffling the world and turning the landscape into a soft, white dream. Inside, there is the gentle clinking of ceramic coffee mugs and the low, rhythmic hum of conversation. Here, a candidate for the highest office in the land might sit at a worn wooden table, sharing a meal and a conversation with a handful of locals. There are no bright television lights, no teleprompters, no roaring crowds, just the steady, honest exchange of ideas between two people. The psychology of this retail approach is fascinating. It forces a level of human connection that mass media simply cannot replicate. When a candidate stands in a living room or a small town hall, they are subject to the thin slicing of human intuition. The voters aren't just listening to policy points, they are observing the tilt of a head, the sincerity in a voice, and the way a person listens to a neighbor's concerns. This intimate vetting process serves as a grounded, human anchor in an often chaotic world. It is a slow, deliberate way of measuring character, much like a stonemason carefully inspects a piece of granite before placing it in a wall. There is a certain quiet magic in the idea that a tiny rural state, filled with more forests than skyscrapers, can hold such a profound sway over the destiny of a vast nation. It is as if the country slows down for a moment, turning its ear toward the north to hear what the people of the Granite State have to say. It is a time of reflection, a time when the noise of the world fades away, leaving only the essential questions of how we should live and who we should follow. But the reach of this small state extends far beyond its borders and even beyond the boundaries of our very atmosphere. The same spirit of being first, the same quiet courage that led a small Congress to declare independence and a small population to lead a nation's choice, eventually looked upward toward the silent, shimmering stars. From the modest towns and winding country roads of New Hampshire, a path was forged that would eventually lead an American out of the familiar green woods and into the ultimate velvet silence of the cosmos. As the sun sets over the white mountains, casting long purple shadows across the valleys, we begin to look toward the horizon, where the terrestrial world meets the infinite. In the quiet town of Derry, New Hampshire, tucked away among the rolling hills and apple orchards, a young boy once looked up at those same stars with a sense of quiet wonder. His name was Alan Shepard. He grew up breathing the crisp air of the Granite State, walking its wooded paths and attending its local schools, never imagining that he would one day be the very first American to leave the Earth's embrace. On a bright morning in May 1961, the world held its breath as he climbed into a small pressurized capsule named Freedom 7. It was a vessel no larger than a small closet, a fragile shell of metal and glass designed to carry a human being into the unknown. As the engines ignited, there was a roar that shook the ground, a powerful surge of energy pushing against the weight of the world. But as the rocket climbed higher and higher, piercing the clouds and then the very ceiling of the sky, that roar began to fade. It was replaced by a profound, almost sacred silence. At the peak of his suborbital flight, 116 miles above the surface of our planet, Alan Shepard experienced something few humans ever had, the absolute stillness of the vacuum. Through the small window of his capsule, he looked down and saw the Earth, not as a map of borders and nations, but as a glowing sapphire marble suspended in an ocean of velvet black. He spoke of the beautiful view, a simple phrase for a sight that changed the course of human history. He could see the Atlantic coastline, the very edge of the state he called home, looking like a delicate lace of white foam against the deep blue of the sea. There was no sound there, no wind, no birdsong, no hum of machinery, just the rhythmic beating of his own heart and the soft hiss of his oxygen supply. It is a silence very much like the one surrounding you now, a deep, protective quiet where the worries of the world feel infinitely far away. In that weightless moment, suspended between the earth and the stars, there is only peace. This overview effect, as scientists call it, is a cognitive shift in awareness. Looking at our home from such a height makes the planet seem fragile and precious, a tiny island of life in a vast, dark sea. It reminds us that we are all part of something much larger, a cosmic dance that has been unfolding for billions of years. Alan Shepard's journey lasted only 15 minutes, a brief arc through the heavens, but it opened a door that would never be closed. He returned to the soil of New Hampshire a hero, but he carried the silence of the stars back with him in his eyes. Yet, the stars have a way of holding on to their secrets. And sometimes, the relationship between the people of New Hampshire and the night sky takes a turn into the mysterious. While Shepherd looked out from his capsule into the void, others, staying firmly on the ground, began to notice things in the sky that defied easy explanation. The same vast, dark canopy that offered Shepherd a path to the stars would, just a few months later, become the setting for a story that would captivate the world and leave a lasting mark on the rugged landscape of the White Mountains. As we drift further into the night, the line between the known and the unknown begins to soften, much like the mist that settles into the mountain valleys at dawn. While the stars offered Alan Shepherd a path to glory, they offered others a different kind of wonder, a mystery that has lingered in the cool mountain air for over 60 years. In the late hours of a September night in 1961, a couple named Betty and Barney Hill were driving home from a vacation, traveling south on Route 3 through the heart of the White Mountains. The road was narrow and winding, flanked by the towering dark silhouettes of the peaks and the dense, fragrant forests of pine and hemlock. It was a night much like any other, quiet and still, until they noticed a bright pulsing light in the sky that seemed to follow the curve of their car. This event would become the first widely reported UFO encounter in history, a story that began right there, under the watchful eyes of the Granite Mountains. They described a craft that descended toward them, a moment of profound confusion, and then a strange, heavy silence. When they finally arrived home, they realized that several hours of their journey were simply missing, a gap in time that they could not explain. This missing time became a subject of intense fascination for researchers and the public alike, turning the quiet woods of New Hampshire into a focal point for those looking to the heavens for answers. From a scientific perspective, many psychologists look at the Hills experience through the lens of the human mind's incredible capacity for storytelling and the way it handles stress. On a long, exhausting drive through a dark, repetitive landscape, the brain can sometimes enter a state of highway hypnosis, where the line between a dream and reality begins to soften. Some suggest that the mind, when faced with an unfamiliar sight, perhaps a bright planet like Jupiter or a weather balloon, can weave a complex narrative to fill in the blanks, creating a memory that feels entirely real. It is a testament to the power of our imagination and our innate desire to find meaning in the vast, silent spaces of the world. One of the most intriguing pieces of this mystery was a star map that Betty later drew while in a deep, relaxed state of recollection. She sketched a series of points and lines representing a distant star system that she claimed had been shown to her. Years later, researchers found that her map bore a striking resemblance to a real binary star system known as Zeta Reticuli, located about 39 light-years away from Earth. These are two sun-like stars that orbit one another in a slow celestial waltz. Whether this was a remarkable coincidence or something more, it adds a layer of quiet beauty to the tale. The idea that even in our dreams, we might be reaching out to the furthest corners of the galaxy. Today, this story is treated as a fascinating piece of New Hampshire folklore, a modern campfire tale that adds to the mystical aura of the White Mountains. There is even a historical marker near the site of the encounter, standing as a quiet reminder of that night in 1961. It isn't a story meant to cause fear, but rather one of curiosity. It asks us to consider the scale of the universe and the many things we have yet to understand. Like the mist that clings to the base of Mount Washington, some things are meant to remain slightly out of focus, shrouded in a gentle, protective mystery. As we leave the enigmatic lights of the mountain passes behind, we find that the people of New Hampshire have always had a deep respect for the unknown, but they also possessed a practical, grounded desire to organize the knowledge they did have. They understood that while the stars hold many secrets, the wisdom of the earth is best kept in a place where it can be shared by all. This led the state to establish another remarkable first, one that brings us back down from the cosmic heights to the comforting solid walls of a village center. We move now from the unmapped stars to the carefully organized rows of a place designed for quiet reflection and the steady pursuit of truth. In the quiet heart of the Monadnock region lies the town of Peterborough, a place where the air often feels still, as if the hills themselves are holding their breath. It was here in the year 1833 that a small but profound revolution in human knowledge took place. While the rest of the young nation was still accustomed to the idea that books were a luxury for the wealthy or the elite, the people of Peterborough decided that wisdom should be a common right. They established the first public library in the United States to be supported entirely by public taxation. It was an act of quiet confidence, a declaration that the mind, like the land, deserves to be tended and nurtured by the community as a whole. Imagine, for a moment, walking through the heavy doors of such a place. The world outside, with its wind and its rushing rivers, seems to fall away, replaced by a deep, insulating hush. There is a very specific atmosphere within the walls of an old library, a sensory experience that naturally encourages the body to relax. The air is often a few degrees cooler, and it carries a scent that many find deeply comforting, a mixture of old wood, faint dust motes dancing in shafts of afternoon sunlight, and the sweet, slightly almond-like aroma of aging paper. There is a gentle science behind this scent. As the pages of old books slowly age, the organic compounds within the paper, like lignin and cellulose, begin to break down. This process releases a variety of fragrant chemicals, including vanillin, which is the same compound that gives vanilla its soothing fragrance. When you breathe in the air of a quiet library, you are literally breathing in the essence of time slowing down, a chemical lullaby that speaks of stability and the preservation of thought. Within these walls, the organized rows we spoke of become a sanctuary. Each spine on the shelf represents a voice from the past, waiting patiently to be heard. The act of reading in such a space is a slow, rhythmic process. The soft friction of a finger tracing a line of text, the crisp, dry sound of a page turning, and the weight of the book resting heavy and solid in your lap. For the people of New Hampshire, this commitment to literacy wasn't just about education. It was about creating a space for the soul to rest and expand during the long, dark winters. It was a way to keep the light of curiosity burning when the sun set at 4 in the afternoon. This deep-seated respect for quiet learning and the steady pursuit of truth is woven into the very fabric of the state. It reflects a culture that values the internal world as much as the external one. But as the winter months deepened and the snow began to blanket the brick libraries and the granite steeples, the people of New Hampshire didn't just stay indoors by the hearth. They found a way to turn the harshest elements of their environment into a form of grace. The same stillness found between the pages of a book could also be found out on the mountainsides, in the silent, frozen cathedrals of the pine forest. This transition from the warmth of the library to the bracing clarity of the outdoors led the state to officially recognize a pursuit that requires a different kind of balance and a different kind of silence. In doing so, New Hampshire became the first state in the Union to elevate a winter pastime to the status of an official state symbol, celebrating the unique physics and the hushed beauty of the world when it is covered in white. In the year 1998, New Hampshire took a step that reflected its deep seasonal soul. It became the first state in the nation to officially name skiing as its state sport. This wasn't merely a nod to the busy resorts or the tourism industry. It was a formal embrace of the winter landscape that defines the state for nearly half the year. To understand why skiing is so integral to the spirit of this place, one must look closely at the very substance that makes it possible, the snow itself. There is a specific kind of magic in what skiers call powder. From a scientific perspective, freshly fallen snow is a marvel of geometry and air. Each snowflake is a complex, six-sided crystal, and when they land upon one another, they don't pack tightly like grains of sand. Instead, they stack loosely, creating a structure that is overwhelmingly composed of empty space. In fact, a layer of fresh powder can be up to 95% air. This high air content transforms the forest into a natural acoustic chamber, sound waves, which usually travel long distances by bouncing off hard surfaces like frozen ground or tree trunks, find no such purchase in the snow. Instead, the sound is swallowed. The tiny air pockets between the ice crystals trap the vibrations, absorbing the noise of the world and leaving behind a profound, heavy silence. Imagine yourself now, gliding through a grove of birch and evergreen. You are on skis, moving with a slow, steady rhythm. There is no engine, no crowd, only the soft, rhythmic friction of your skis sliding across the surface. The sound is a gentle hush, like a long, drawn-out breath. The trees around you are draped in heavy white blankets, their branches bowing low under the weight of the crystals. Because the snow absorbs all distant sounds, your own heartbeat and the sound of your breathing become the only metronome in this white wilderness. It is a form of moving meditation, where the boundary between the person and the landscape begins to blur. You are moving through a world that has been hushed by physics, a place where the air is crisp, clean, and perfectly still. As you glide further into the interior, away from the cleared trails and into the deep back country, you begin to realize just how vast this white world really is. The trees aren't just a backdrop. They are the primary residents of this land. The silent, snow-covered forest you are passing through is part of a much larger story of resilience and regrowth. New Hampshire's identity is inextricably linked to these woods, which have watched over the granite hills for centuries, growing thicker and more expansive with every passing generation. To understand the heart of the state, one must look past the snow and the mountains to the living, breathing green canopy that covers nearly every corner of this ancient terrain. As you move deeper into this hushed, white wilderness, it is easy to imagine that these woods have stood unchanged since the beginning of time. The trees seem so permanent, their trunks thick, and their roots anchored deep within the granite soil. Yet, the story of the New Hampshire forest is one of a remarkable and silent transformation. Today, New Hampshire is the second most forested state in the entire United States, when measured by the percentage of its land area. Over 80% of the state is blanketed in a dense, living canopy that stretches from the rolling hills of the south to the rugged peaks of the north. But if you could travel back in time to the mid-19th century, the view from these same hills would have been unrecognizable. At that time, nearly 70% of the land had been cleared of its ancient trees. The primary reason was a phenomenon known as sheep fever. In the 1800s, the demand for wool was so great that farmers clear-cut the hillsides to create vast pastures for millions of merino sheep. The once dark forests were replaced by open, grassy fields, divided by miles upon miles of hand-built stone walls. As the sheep industry eventually moved westward and people began to leave the rocky New England soil for the softer lands of the Midwest, a quiet miracle began to take place. This process, known to ecologists as refolding, is a testament to nature's incredible patience. Without the constant grazing of livestock, the earth began to reclaim its own. First came the sun-loving pioneer species, white pines and birches, whose seeds were carried on the wind into the abandoned pastures. These early arrivals acted as a protective nursery, casting a cooling shade that allowed the slower-growing hardwoods, like the sugar maple, the beech, and the yellow birch, to take root in the rich leaf litter. If you were to walk through these woods today, you would likely encounter the evidence of this history. Deep in the interior of the forest, far from any modern road or house, you will find those same stone walls, now weathered and covered in soft green moss. They wind through the thickets like gray ribbons, marking the boundaries of fields that no longer exist. To see a south wall in the middle of a dense forest is to witness a slow-motion victory for the natural world. It is a reminder that the earth is constantly breathing, expanding, and healing itself in a timeline much longer than our own. There is a profound sense of peace in this realization. The idea that the land is not static, but always moving toward a state of balance. The forest we see today is a gift of time and resilience. It is a vast, complex ecosystem that has returned to provide a home for countless species that had once been pushed to the fringes. Within this deep, regenerated green, there is plenty of room for the larger inhabitants of the wild to wander undisturbed. The thick brush and hidden clearings of these secondary forests provide the perfect sanctuary for a creature that embodies the slow, steady spirit of the New Hampshire wilderness. As the light begins to dim between the tall trunks of the pines, one such giant may be stepping out from the shadows, moving with a quiet, heavy grace through the very same woods that were once open fields. Among the shadows of these returning forests, there is one resident who stands as a true symbol of the New Hampshire wild, a creature of immense size and quiet dignity. The moose population in this state is one of the densest in the lower 48 states, finding a perfect sanctuary in the cool, damp thickets and the thousands of hidden ponds scattered throughout the great North Woods and the White Mountains. To see a moose in the wild is to see a relic of the Ice Age, a slow-moving giant that seems to exist in a different tempo than the rest of the world. Despite their massive frame, often weighing over 1,000 pounds and standing 6 feet tall at the shoulder, moose are masters of silent movement. You might imagine that such a large animal would crash through the undergrowth, but their long, spindly legs are designed to lift high over fallen logs and tangled brush without making a sound. Their hooves are large and splayed, acting like natural snowshoes or paddles, allowing them to walk across soft, muddy bogs where other heavy animals would sink. In the dim light of a New Hampshire twilight, a moose can emerge from the tree line like a ghost, its dark coat blending into the deepening purple of the evening, only to vanish back into the timber just as silently as it arrived. The biology of the moose is a fascinating study in specialized adaptation, particularly when it comes to their diet. They are one of the few large land mammals that spend a significant amount of time foraging underwater. A moose can dive up to 20 feet deep and stay submerged for nearly a minute to reach the nutrient-rich sodium found in aquatic plants at the bottom of a pond. To do this, they possess a unique anatomical feature, large muscular nostrils that act as valves. When the moose lowers its head beneath the surface, the water pressure causes the nostrils to seal shut automatically, preventing water from entering the respiratory tract while they graze on pond lilies and eelgrass. Watching a moose feed in a still mountain pond is a deeply meditative experience. You might see only the hump of its back and the top of its head above the water, the rhythmic drip-drip of the surface tension breaking as it lifts its head to chew, its large ears swiveling to catch the faintest rustle of the wind. There is a sense of ancient patience in their movements, a slow-motion gait that mirrors the steady growth of the forest around them. They do not hurry. They simply exist, moving with a heavy, rhythmic grace through the wetlands and the high ridges, undisturbed by the passage of time. As the sun dips further below the horizon and the giant silhouette of the moose fades back into the velvet darkness of the pines, the landscape begins to change its palette. While the moose represents the heavy, earthy strength of the granite hills, the New Hampshire soil also gives rise to something far more delicate and vibrant. In the clearings where the forest gives way to open meadows, a different kind of life begins to stir, not in the form of a wandering giant, but in a sea of color that paints the fields in shades of violet and rose. As we leave the deep shade of the moose's kingdom, we move toward the sunlit slopes where a much smaller, yet equally remarkable inhabitant of the state is preparing to bloom as we emerge from the dense, cool shadows of the great North Woods, where the moose wanders in silence. The landscape opens up into rolling fields and sun-drenched hillsides. Here, the heavy greens of the forest give way to a different kind of magic. Every June, in the small, picturesque town of Sugar Hill, a quiet transformation takes place. The meadows, which spent the winter tucked under a blanket of white, begin to ripple with waves of color. This is the time of the Sugar Hill Lupin Festival, a celebration of a wildflower that seems to capture the very essence of a New Hampshire spring. Imagine standing on a gentle slope as the morning mist begins to lift. Before you, thousands upon thousands of lupins stand tall in the grass. Their spires of blossoms reach toward the sun, creating a tapestry of deep purples, soft pinks, dusty blues, and pure whites. The air here is different. It is light and sweet, carried by a breeze that makes the long stems of the flowers sway in a slow, rhythmic dance. It is a sight so peaceful that it feels as though the earth itself is exhaling after a long, cold sleep. But beneath the surface of this vibrant floral display, a quiet, scientific miracle is taking place. While we admire the lupine for its outward beauty, the plant is hard at work performing a vital service for the environment. Lupines are members of the legume family, which includes peas and beans, and they possess a remarkable ability known as nitrogen fixation. Most plants simply take nutrients from the soil, but the lupine is a giver. Deep in the earth, within the intricate network of the lupine's roots, there are tiny rounded structures called nodules. These nodules are home to specialized bacteria known as rhizobia. In a beautiful act of symbiosis, these bacteria take nitrogen from the air, a gas that most plants cannot use directly, and convert it into a form of natural fertilizer. This nitrogen is then released into the soil, enriching the ground and making it more fertile for the grasses and other wildflowers that grow nearby. The lupine does not just exist to be beautiful, it exists to heal. It often thrives in poor, sandy soil where other plants might struggle to survive. And by growing there, it slowly improves the quality of the land, preparing the way for future life. It is a comforting thought to hold as you imagine those fields of purple and pink, that even in the quietest corners of the state, nature is constantly working to restore and nurture itself. The beauty we see above the ground is simply a reflection of the restoration happening beneath it. As we linger in the memory of these sunlit fields, let us take a moment to find that same sense of restoration within ourselves. Just as the lupine settles into the earth, allow yourself to settle deeper into your bed. Feel the support of the mattress beneath you, steady and unchanging, like the granite bedrock of the hills. Take a slow, quiet breath in, feeling the coolness of the air as it enters your lungs. And as you let that breath out, imagine any lingering tension leaving your body, dissolving like the morning mist over the meadows of Sugar Hill. Your mind is calm, your body is heavy, and you are safe in this moment of stillness. We are moving now into a time of deeper rest, where the air grows a bit crisper and the rhythms of the land come even more gentle. Let the image of the swaying flowers fade into a soft, dark velvet as we prepare to journey further into the quiet heart of the New Hampshire night. Before we move deeper into the quiet woods, let us pause for a moment to align our breath with the slow, ancient rhythm of the land. Wherever you are, allow your shoulders to drop an inch further away from your ears. Let the weight of your head be fully claimed by the pillow. We are going to take a very slow, intentional breath together, mirroring the way the trees themselves seem to breathe with the changing seasons. Inhale slowly through your nose, feeling the cool air fill your lungs for a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, Hold that breath gently, feeling a sense of absolute stillness within you for another 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and finally exhale through your mouth, a long, steady sigh that carries away any remaining thoughts for 6 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Feel the way your body sinks a little deeper into the mattress with that final release. You are perfectly supported. You are exactly where you need to be, safe and warm as the world outside grows still. Now, imagine the air around you has changed. The humid warmth of the summer lupine fields has been replaced by the sharp, clean clarity of a New Hampshire autumn evening. The sun has dipped far below the jagged horizon of the White Mountains, leaving behind a sky of deep indigo and pale, dusty violet. In the woods that surround you, the vibrant greens of summer have been replaced by a silent mosaic of burnt orange, deep crimson, and pale gold. There is a specific, comforting scent to this time of year in the Granite State, a mixture of drying leaves, wood smoke drifting from a distant chimney, and the damp, earthy fragrance of the forest floor as it prepares for its long winter sleep. It is a time of transition, a quiet folding in of energy. The songbirds have grown quieter, and the wind through the high branches sounds like a soft, rhythmic hush, whispering through the thousands of miles of forest that blanket the hills. In this cooling landscape, the trees are beginning a silent, internal journey. Among the oaks and the birches, the sugar maple stands as a noble sentinel. These trees are the quiet architects of one of New Hampshire's most cherished traditions, a practice that defines the rhythm of the year for many who live here. While the maples look dormant and still in the cooling air, they are actually beginning a complex biological dance that relies entirely on the precise, temperamental climate of the New England woods. As the nights grow colder and the days remain bright and crisp, the trees respond to the shift in atmospheric pressure, preparing for a process that has remained largely unchanged for centuries. This is the beginning of a story that is written in the very veins of the wood, a story of sweetness, of incredible patience, and the perfect balance of the elements. It is the science of the harvest, a slow-motion miracle that we often call liquid gold, born from the heart of the forest during the quietest hours of the year. Imagine, if you will, the sheer scale of the patience required to harvest the sweetness hidden within these trees. While the maple tree stands tall and silent in the crisp air, it holds a secret of incredible concentration. To produce just 1 single gallon of the rich amber maple syrup that New Hampshire is so famous for, it takes approximately 40 gallons of raw sap. 40 gallons of clear, watery liquid must be gathered drop by drop and then slowly, meticulously boiled down until only the essence remains. It is a ratio that speaks of an incredible quiet abundance, but also of a profound necessity for patience. It is a reminder that the most valuable things in life often require a long, slow process of refinement. This harvest, known as the sap run, is not something that can be forced or rushed. It is entirely dependent on a delicate natural clock. It requires a very specific atmospheric harmony that usually occurs in that fleeting window between late winter and early spring. For the sap to flow, the nights must be cold enough to freeze the ground and the bark, dipping well below 32 degrees. Then, the following day must be touched by the warmth of the sun, climbing high enough to cause a gentle thaw. This rhythmic cycle of freezing and thawing creates a natural pump within the maple tree. At night, as the temperature drops, the gases inside the tree contract, creating a vacuum that pulls water up through the roots. During the day, as the sun warms the trunk, the gases expand, creating pressure that pushes the sap back down and out through any small opening it can find. It is as if the tree itself is taking long, slow breaths, inhaling the cold of the night and exhaling the sweetness of the day. If you were to stand in a New Hampshire sugar bush, a grove of tapped maples, on a quiet March afternoon, the most prominent sound you would hear is not the wind or the birds, but a soft, rhythmic percussion, drip, drip, drip. Each drop of sap hitting the bottom of a traditional metal bucket creates a hollow silver ring that echoes through the still snow-covered woods. It is a natural metronome, a slow and steady heartbeat for the forest that invites you to slow your own pace. The sound is steady, unhurried, and immensely peaceful. It tells a story of time passing in the most productive yet quietest way possible. This tradition of working in harmony with the seasons, of waiting for the perfect moment and then working with diligent, quiet resolve, has deeply influenced the character of those who call this state home. There is a sense of groundedness here, a practical and independent spirit that values self-reliance and the preservation of resources. This frugal mindset is not just a personal trait of the people. It is baked into the very identity of the state, extending from the sugar houses and the granite quarries into the very way the government and the economy are structured. It has created a way of life that is as distinct and unyielding as the stone the state is named for, leading to an economic landscape that is unlike any other in the nation. This focus on the practical and the enduring is not merely a part of the local personality, it is written into the very laws that govern the land. In a world that often feels increasingly complex and layered with hidden costs, New Hampshire remains a sanctuary of simplicity. This is most evident in its unique economic identity, which is perhaps the purest reflection of the live free or die spirit. New Hampshire is one of the few places in the country where there is no general sales tax and no personal income tax on wages. To someone visiting from a neighboring state, this can feel like a quiet revelation. This frugal mindset is baked into the state's identity, born from a long history of self-reliance and a deep-seated belief that a person should be able to keep what they have worked so hard to earn. It creates a sense of transparency in daily life that is rare. There is a mental restfulness that comes from this kind of clarity. When you walk into a small general store or a quiet bookstore in a mountain village, the world feels a little less cluttered. Imagine, for a moment, the simple act of a transaction in this environment. In most places, the price you see on a tag is merely a suggestion, a starting point before the math of the world intervenes. But here, the math slows down. If you find a hand-carved wooden bowl for $20, you place a $20 bill on the counter, and the exchange is complete. There is no mental gymnastics, no searching for extra coins, no sudden jump in price at the register. The number you see is the number that is. This simplicity scales upward in a way that can feel almost surreal. If you were to purchase a car, or perhaps a diamond ring for a loved one, the price listed on the tag is the exact amount you pay. If a vehicle is priced at $30,000, you write a check for exactly $30,000. This lack of hidden layers creates a feeling of honesty and predictability. It is a steady, unyielding approach to life that mirrors the granite beneath the soil. Solid, unchanging, and easy to understand. It reflects a culture that values the direct path over the complicated one. This frugal nature isn't about a lack of generosity, but rather a commitment to making things last and keeping systems manageable. It is about the preservation of resources and the respect for the individual's journey. This mindset of preservation, of keeping things functional, honest, and protected from the elements of change, extends far beyond the marketplace. It can be seen in the way the people of New Hampshire have maintained their connection to the past, especially in the structures they built to navigate their rugged terrain. As we leave the quiet, uncomplicated shops of the village and move back toward the winding riverbanks, we see this same spirit of practical preservation in the way the early residents conquered the landscape. Just as they sought to protect their earnings from complexity, they sought to protect their vital pathways from the harshness of the northern climate. This led to the creation of some of the state's most iconic and enduring architectural treasures, structures designed to stand the test of time by shielding their very foundations from the rain and the snow. One such structure, spanning the wide and steady waters of the Connecticut River, remains a testament to this philosophy of building things to last. This structure is the Cornish-Windsor Covered Bridge. For over a century and a half, it has stretched across the Connecticut River, connecting the town of Cornish, New Hampshire, to its neighbor, Windsor, Vermont. At nearly 450 feet long, it was for many years celebrated as the longest wooden-covered bridge in the United States. Even today, as you look down its long, shadowy interior, the perspective seems to stretch on forever, a wooden tunnel of quiet and strength that feels entirely removed from the rushing pace of modern life. The decision to cover these bridges was born of the same practical, frugal spirit we have been exploring. It is a common misconception that the roofs were built primarily to keep the snow off the travelers or to keep horses from being spooked by the rushing water below. While those were pleasant side effects, the true reason was far more scientific and rooted in the preservation of resources. An uncovered wooden bridge exposed to the relentless New England rain and the punishing cycles of freezing and thawing might only last 10 or 15 years before its heavy timber trusses began to rot and lose their structural integrity. But by adding a roof and siding, the internal skeleton of the bridge, the intricate network of beams and braces, remains dry and protected from the elements. This simple architectural shield acts like an umbrella for the engineering beneath. Because of this foresight, the Cornish-Windsor Bridge has stood since 1866, defying the elements for over 150 years. It is a testament to the idea that a little extra protection in the beginning can ensure a lifetime of stability. When you pass through such a bridge, the world changes. The bright, open glare of the riverbank is replaced by a soft, amber dimness. The air inside smells faintly of seasoned hemlock, old dust, and the cool, damp breath of the river rising through the narrow gaps in the floorboards. The most enchanting part of the experience, however, is the sound. If you were crossing in a horse-drawn carriage a century ago, the rhythmic clop-clop of hooves against the thick wooden planks would create a hollow musical echo that bounced off the walls, resonant and steady. Even today, the slow roll of a car's tire produces a deep, low-frequency hum, a rhythmic thrumming that feels like the heartbeat of the structure itself. It is a sound that signals a transition, a moment of passage, where the noise of the outside world is momentarily muffled by the heavy timber. In this sheltered space, you are suspended between two shores, held up by the strength of ancient trees and the wisdom of 19th century builders. This rhythmic passage, the steady beat of travel, is one of the many ways we mark our progress through the day. In the quiet of the bridge, time seems to slow down, allowing us to appreciate the steady, unhurried pace of the river below. But as society grew and the need for precision increased, the people of New Hampshire began to look for ways to master time itself, not just to pass through it. This desire for order and the necessity of a structured morning led to a curious invention in the capital city of Concord, an invention designed to pull the mind out of its deepest rest and into the duties of the day, though perhaps not in the way we might expect. In the quiet of a workshop in Concord, late in the 18th century, the air would have been filled with the delicate, rhythmic heartbeat of 100 different timepieces. This was the domain of Levi Hutchins, a master clockmaker who had served as an apprentice to the famous Simon Willard. In the year 1787, the world was a place of slow transitions, where the rising sun was usually the only signal to begin the day's labor. But Hutchins was a man of extraordinary discipline, a man who believed that the early hours of the morning were the most precious for a craftsman. He found it distressing when he occasionally slept past the dawn, losing those silent, productive moments before the rest of the world stirred. To solve this, he turned to his craft. Using his knowledge of gears, springs, and brass, he constructed a small wooden cabinet containing a unique inner mechanism. This was the first mechanical alarm clock ever built in America. It was a marvel of precision, a way to harness the abstract flow of time and turn it into a physical command. However, this invention possessed a peculiar and uncompromising limitation. Unlike the devices we use today, which allow us to negotiate with our schedules, Hutchins' clock had no dial to set the alarm. It was built with a single, fixed internal gear that would trigger a bell to strike at one time, and one time only, 4 o'clock in the morning. For Hutchins, this was the perfect hour. It was the time he had chosen for himself, and therefore, it was the only time the clock needed to know. There was no snooze button, no way to delay the inevitable, and no way to change the setting for a day of rest. Every morning, in the deep blue darkness of the New Hampshire woods, that brass bell would ring out, pulling him from his dreams and into the cool air of his workshop. He never patented the invention, nor did he ever seek to mass produce it. For him, the clock was a personal companion, a tool to ensure his own steadfastness. He lived to the age of 94, perhaps sustained by the very routine his clock enforced. But as you listen to this now, you can feel a deep sense of relief. That relentless 4 o'clock bell belongs to another century. You're not bound by the rigid gears of 1787. In the sanctuary of your room, Time is not a master to be obeyed, but a soft, flowing river that carries you toward rest. There is no brass hammer waiting to strike, no sudden noise to startle the stillness. You have the luxury of the entire night ahead of you, a vast, dark ocean of hours where nothing is required and no one is calling you to work. The world of Levi Hutchins was one of industry and early rising, but your world in this moment is one of total permission to remain still. Let the image of that old wooden clock fade away, its ticking becoming fainter and fainter until it is nothing more than a memory of a distant era. While Hutchins sought to capture time within a small wooden box, there are other places in the New Hampshire landscape where time seems to have been measured on a much grander, more mysterious scale. We move away from the precision of the clockmaker's bench and travel south toward the town of Salem. Here, tucked away in the woods, lies a place that challenges our understanding of history and how ancient people track the passage of the seasons. It is a place where the clocks are made not of brass and wood, but of massive, silent stones that have stood for thousands of years. In the quiet town of Salem, New Hampshire, there is a place where the earth seems to hold on to its secrets with a heavy, silent grip. Tucked away among the white pines and sturdy oaks lies a site known to many as America's Stonehenge. It is a sprawling maze of stone chambers, low walls, and mysterious inscriptions scattered across 30 acres of a granite-topped hill. As you settle deeper into your blankets, imagine the cool, damp scent of the forest floor and the way the shadows of the trees stretch long and thin across these ancient stones. Unlike the towering, iconic monoliths of England, the structures here are more intimate, integrated into the very roots of the landscape. They are built of the same weathered granite that defines the state, covered in a soft emerald velvet of moss and the gray-green lace of lichen. For decades, this site has been a quiet riddle tucked away in the woods. Some researchers and archaeologists believe that these stoneworks are nearly 4,000 years old, potentially built by a culture whose name and language have been lost to the winds of time. To understand the age of this place, scientists have turned to the earth itself. By using carbon dating on fragments of charcoal found buried deep within the soil beneath the stone walls, they discovered evidence of human activity dating back millennia. These tiny burnt remnants of ancient fires suggest that people were gathered on this hilltop long before the first European ships ever sighted the New England coast. It is a puzzle made of heavy rock, a library of stone where the pages are written in the language of the stars and the seasons. Perhaps the most mesmerizing feature of this site is its relationship with the sky. Many of the large standing stones are perfectly aligned with the sunset and sunrise of the summer and winter solstices, as well as the equinoxes. This entire hilltop acts as a massive, immovable calendar, tracking the slow, rhythmic dance of the earth as it circles the sun. On the shortest day of the year, when the world is hushed by the coming winter and the air is crisp and clear, the morning light strikes a specific standing stone with mathematical precision. It is a profound thought to hold as you drift toward sleep, that even in the deepest antiquity, people looked up at the same moon and the same constellations that watch over you tonight. They sought to mark the rhythm of the universe, creating a sense of order out of the vastness of time, just as you are now finding your own rhythm of breath and rest. Whether these stones were placed by indigenous peoples, early explorers, or even later colonial farmers who shared a deep connection to the land, the mystery remains largely unsolved. In that uncertainty, there is a peculiar kind of peace. Not every question requires a definitive answer, and the woods are often at their most beautiful when they are allowed to keep their secrets. The stones of Salem remain steady, unmoving, and patient, a quiet testament to the enduring nature of the Granite State. They have watched the seasons change for thousands of years, and they will continue to stand long after the night has passed. As we leave these heavy, ancient monuments behind and look down toward the damp, cool earth at the base of the stones, we find a different kind of life. It is something much smaller, more delicate, and vibrantly alive. Among the fallen leaves and the soft shadows cast by the granite slabs, a tiny, bright spark of color moves with slow, patient grace through the undergrowth. This little traveler is a symbol of the state's quiet resilience, navigating a world that, to it, must seem as vast and eternal as the stone chambers themselves. If you were to look very closely at the damp forest floor, perhaps near the base of a moss-covered granite boulder or tucked between the roots of a sentinel hemlock, you might see a tiny spark of brilliant neon orange. It looks almost like a small, misplaced piece of a bright autumn leaf, but it is moving slowly and with a singular purpose. This is the red eft, the juvenile stage of the red-spotted newt, which serves as New Hampshire's official state amphibian. While most amphibians spend their lives tethered closely to the water, the red eft is a wanderer, a traveler of the damp earth. It is in the midst of a remarkable teenage phase that can last anywhere from 2 to 7 years, a long, slow sabbatical spent entirely on land, exploring the bat-shadowed cathedral of the forest floor. Its color is one of the most striking sights in the New England woods. Against the deep, earthy greens of the moss and the dark velvet browns of the decaying pine needles, the EFT's skin glows with a vibrant, almost supernatural intensity. In the natural world, such a bold display is rarely an accident. This is a beautiful example of aposematism, a visual warning to any curious predator that this tiny creature is not to be touched. The EFT's skin produces a specialized toxin that makes it unpalatable, even dangerous, to birds, snakes, and small mammals. Because of this invisible shield of color, the red eft does not live in a state of frantic hiding. It does not need to scurry or dart away at the sound of a distant footfall. Instead, it moves with a calm, steady confidence that is rare for such a small being. You might find one crossing a hiking trail after a soft summer rain, its tiny, delicate limbs moving in a slow, rhythmic crawl. It takes its time, unbothered by the rush of the world around it. There is something deeply peaceful about watching an EFT make its way across a forest path. It is a creature that has found safety in its own nature, allowing it to experience the world at a pace that feels almost meditative. It navigates the miniature mountains of tree roots and the vast valleys of shallow puddles with a patient persistence, a tiny orange pioneer in a world of giants. Each step it takes is deliberate, a quiet testament to the idea that even the smallest life has its own grand journey to complete. Eventually, after years of life on the forest floor, the EFT will feel the pull of the water once again. Its bright orange skin will gradually fade to a duller olive green. Its tail will broaden for swimming, and it will return to the cool depths of a pond to live out the rest of its days as an aquatic adult. But for now, in its youthful wandering, it remains a bright, slow-moving reminder of the hidden complexity of the New Hampshire wilderness. As we leave the tiny, vibrant world of the newt behind and continue our journey further north, the forests begin to grow even more vast, and the air becomes noticeably crisper. We are traveling toward a specific point in the landscape where the geography of the state aligns with the geometry of the earth itself. It is a place where the map and the stars meet, marked by a quiet sign in the woods that tells us exactly where we stand in the grand balance of the hemisphere. As we continue our journey further north, the roads begin to narrow, winding through the rolling hills and deep valleys of Coos County. The air here feels thinner, purer, as if it hasn't been touched by the bustle of the world for a long, long time. In the quiet town of Clarksville, near the very top of the state, there is a modest roadside sign that marks a profound invisible boundary. It tells us that we have reached the 45th parallel, the exact halfway point between the equator and the North Pole. Standing by this sign, you might feel a strange, comforting sense of equilibrium. To your south, the Earth stretches away toward the vibrant, tropical heat of the equator, a land of endless sun and humid breezes. To your north, the world curves toward the silent, frozen expanse of the Arctic, where the ice remains undisturbed and the stars circle a fixed point in the sky. Here in New Hampshire, you are perfectly cradled in the middle. You are standing on the very seam of the hemisphere's great coat. The science of this location is written in the tilt and the spin of our planet. Because the Earth is a sphere, or very nearly one, the sun's rays strike the land at different angles depending on how far you are from the center. At the 45th parallel, New Hampshire sits in what scientists call the temperate zone, a geographical sweet spot. It is far enough north to experience the deep restorative silence of a snowy winter, yet far enough south to feel the lush green embrace of a warm summer. It is a place of true seasons, where the planet's breath is felt in the changing colors of the leaves and the rhythmic freezing and thawing of the mountain streams. Take a moment to imagine the earth spinning beneath your feet. Feel the gentle, steady rotation of the world as it carries you through the darkness. There is a profound peace in knowing that you are balanced so perfectly between the extremes of fire and ice. You're in a place of moderation, a landscape that understands the value of both the sun's energy and the winter's rest. This geographic balance has shaped everything about the state, from the hardy trees that can survive a blizzard to the resilient people who have learned to live in harmony with the shifting weather. This sense of balance, of being perfectly adapted to a world of both snow and sun, extends to the creatures that have called these woods home for generations. Just as the landscape sits between two worlds, some of the state's most beloved companions were bred specifically to thrive in this unique northern environment. To understand the heart of New Hampshire's wilderness, we must look to a creature that embodies the loyalty, strength, and quiet endurance of the Granite State, a rare and gentle guardian known as the Chinook. Among the many residents of these ancient hills, there is one that carries the very spirit of the New Hampshire wilderness in its heart. This is the Chinook, a breed of dog so intertwined with the history of the Granite State that it was officially named the State Dog in 2009. To know the Chinook is to understand a specific kind of New Hampshire character, one that is rugged and capable, yet profoundly gentle and quiet. The story of the Chinook begins in the early 20th century in the small mountain-shadowed village of Wonalancet. A man named Arthur Walden, a veteran of the Yukon Gold Rush, sought to create a new kind of sled dog. He wanted an animal that possessed the raw power of a draft dog and the tireless speed of a racing hound, but with a temperament that was exceptionally calm and affectionate. He succeeded in a way that felt almost like alchemy, blending the traits of various working breeds to produce a dog that was perfectly adapted to the demanding terrain of the White Mountains. The Chinook is a beautiful, honey-colored dog, built for the endurance of those long, snowy winters we have been imagining. But unlike many other working breeds that might be restless or loud, the Chinook is famous for its steady, peaceful disposition. They are dogs of rhythm and silence. Even their voices are unique. They are known for a soft, melodic wooing sound rather than a sharp or startling bark. It is a gentle form of communication that fits perfectly into the hushed atmosphere of a New Hampshire evening, a sound that doesn't break the stillness, but rather becomes a part of it. However, the history of the Chinook almost came to a silent end. By the early 1980s, the breed had become so scarce that it was officially recognized by the Guinness Book of World Records as the rarest dog breed in the entire world. At its lowest point, there were only 11 individuals of breeding age left on the entire planet. It was a fragile thread of life, a legacy nearly lost to the shadows of the forest, a ghost of the mountains waiting to fade away. But there is a resilience in this land that mirrors the hardness of the granite beneath the soil. A dedicated group of breeders and admirers refuse to let the Chinook vanish. Through years of careful, patient effort, they brought the breed back from the very brink of extinction. Today, while still a rare and special sight, the Chinook stands as a symbol of successful conservation and the quiet strength of human devotion. To see a Chinook today is to see a living piece of New Hampshire history, a creature that was almost lost, now restored to the world. Imagine one of these golden dogs now, trotting silently through a dusting of fresh snow, its breath rising in small white clouds in the crisp, clean air. It moves with a steady, effortless gait, heading toward the deeper, more remote parts of the state where the roads end and the wilderness truly begins. As we follow that path further north, the small towns begin to thin out. The houses grow farther apart, and the lights of civilization fade into the soft glow of the horizon. We are entering a place where the map becomes simpler and the silence becomes absolute. We are moving into the Great North Woods, a vast expanse where the trees outnumber the people by the millions, and the night sky belongs only to the stars. As we travel further north, the landscape begins to change. The rolling hills of the central part of the state give way to something more rugged, more ancient. This is Coos County, the crown of New Hampshire, home to what is known as the Great North Woods. It is a place where the human footprint is light, where the map is dominated not by roads or towns, but by the deep dark green of spruce, hemlock, and fir. In this part of the world, there is a profound sense of scale. It is estimated that in these northern reaches, the trees outnumber the human residents by many millions. For every person living here, there are thousands upon thousands of individual trees standing in a quiet, patient assembly that has existed for centuries. The silence here is different from the silence of a quiet room. It is a thick, textured stillness, the kind of silence that only exists when you are miles away from the nearest engine or electrical hum. It is the sound of the wind moving through the needles of a balsam fir, a soft, rushing sigh that sounds like the breath of the earth itself. If you were to stand in the middle of these woods at midnight, the only thing you might hear is the occasional, gentle snap of a freezing branch or the distant, lonely call of a barred owl. It is a restorative silence, one that invites you to let go of the noise of the day and sink into the natural rhythm of the land. Because there are so few people and so little infrastructure, the Great North Woods is one of the last bastions of true darkness in the eastern United States. There is no orange glow on the horizon from a distant city, no flickering streetlights to compete with the heavens. When the sun slips behind the peaks of the northern mountains, the world transitions into a darkness so deep and velvety it feels like a soft, physical blanket. And then as your eyes adjust, the sky begins to reveal its secrets. Without the interference of artificial light, the stars appear not as scattered points, but as a dense, shimmering tapestry. The Milky Way stretches across the sky from horizon to horizon, a luminous river of stardust that looks so close you feel as though you could reach up and touch it. You can see the great rift, the dark lanes of interstellar dust that block the light from the galactic center, creating a sense of depth and three-dimensionality that is lost in more populated areas. To look up at this sky is to look back in time, seeing light that has traveled for thousands of years just to reach this quiet corner of New Hampshire. It is a humbling and peaceful sight, a reminder that we are part of something vast and beautifully ordered. In this stillness, the boundaries between the earth and the sky seem to blur. The dark silhouettes of the pines reach upward, anchoring the starlight to the ground. There is nothing to do here but exist, to breathe in the cold, clean air and let the weight of the universe settle gently around you. The world is at rest, and you are safe within that rest. Every tree, every stone, and every star is in its proper place, moving through time with a slow, deliberate grace. As we linger here in the heart of the Great North Woods, we begin to feel the pull of that same steady rhythm, a gentle invitation to close our eyes and join the quiet world in its slumber. We have traveled from the granite depths to the highest peaks, and now, under the watchful gaze of the Milky Way, we find the ultimate stillness. As we come to the end of our journey through this land of granite and mystery, let your mind rest on the images we have gathered together. We have traveled from the deep, molten origins of the state's bedrock to the shimmering, island-studded surface of Lake Winnipesaukee. We have felt the imaginary spray of the short, salt-crusted coastline and heard the rhythmic, hollow echo of tires crossing a wooden-covered bridge. We have looked through the eyes of Alan Shepard at the silent blue curve of the earth and stood in the hushed, sunlit aisles of the nation's first public library. These stories, these facts, are now part of the quiet landscape of your mind. They are steady, they are certain, and they are peaceful. Reflect for a moment on the character of this place, a land of firsts that doesn't feel the need to shout its achievements. New Hampshire is a place of quiet strength and enduring patience. Its motto, "Live free or die," was born not of a loud demand, but of a private letter written by a man who simply valued his peace. Its mountains do not rush to meet the clouds. They have been shaped by glaciers over 12,000 years, standing as silent witnesses to the slow passage of time. The old man of the mountain may have returned to the earth, but his profile remains in the memory of the people and the symbols of the state. A ghost of the landscape that reminds us that even when things change, their essence remains. The state of New Hampshire remains ancient and steady while you sleep. The wind on the high peaks of Mount Washington has softened to a distant, rhythmic hum, a natural lullaby that exists far above the warmth of your blankets. The M. by Sophie Sea has returned to its dock. The mail delivered, the lake waters now as still as a mirror, reflecting the constellations of the northern sky. The red-spotted newt has found a damp, mossy crevice for the night, and the great moose are bedding down in the soft, fragrant ferns of the great north woods. The world is at rest, and you are part of that rest. Feel the weight of your body sinking further into your bed, as solid and supported as the granite bedrock that anchors the White Mountains. There is no more to learn tonight, no more to explore. The facts have done their work, grounding your mind in the reality of a beautiful, orderly world. You're safe in the stillness. You are grounded in the strength of the earth and the quiet peace of the The air is cool, the room is dark, and the night is long and restorative. As the silence deepens, let the names and the places drift away like autumn leaves on a slow-moving stream. The granite, the lupins, the hidden stone chambers, the white-capped mountains, they are all there, steady and unmoving, guarding your sleep. Thank you for wandering through the Granite State with me. May your rest be as deep as the glacial lakes and as peaceful as the midnight woods. Sleep now. The world is quiet. The journey is complete. Sweet dreams.